And welcome to another exciting Blender tutorial. Today we're going to be creating the facial expression rig for our scanner bot. Let's jump into it. Okay, so today what we're going to do is take our scanner bot and we're going to be creating the facial rig that we're going to use to help create expressions on this. It's going to be really, really cool. So let me go ahead and turn on our render view, and you can see that we've got the we had from last time. We've got this nice blank center section that we set up for ourselves to work with. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a material that we can control a little bit to kind of create some really neat facial expressions. At least that's the plan. So let's jump into it. Now, what we want to do is, first off, we want to designate this center area as give a material to this center area that we can use. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit my brush selection tool, and I'm going to select this right here, and then I'm going to select this section as well, and I think I'll go all the way up to here, and we'll see. We may use this bit. Let's see. Let's go ahead and select it, and we'll see how it all looks. So I'll go ahead and select all those guys. I'll hit Escape to get out of my selection mode, and then what I'll do is I'll come over here and I'll hit the plus sign, and I'll go new, and actually I'm just going to create a new material. We'll just click that there, and what we're going to do is we're going to type in a name. We'll call it let's see, scanner face, and we'll click assign. All right, cool. So now you can see we've assigned this new material, and it's just to this front face area. If you can't really see it, we can make it red, then you can really tell what's going on. So what we want to do is we want to create a system where we've got basically two concentric circles. We want to have a center circle that's like an eye, and then we have like an outer ring as well that kind of creates sort of the outer part of the eye. So sort of the iris and then the outer part. I want to use something similar to what we've got on this outside bit with the jet. I want to do sort of like a grid-based thing. I may even just take this and apply it to this as the basis of this thing. So let's actually go ahead and do that. We'll start with this. I think this is kind of cool. So right here for scanner face, I'm going to actually I'm going to switch over to scanner jets. And that will apply this material to that area. And then I'm just going to click on the new material button. And this is going to turn this into a brand new material. So it's not the same scanner jet material that we have over here. All right. And I'm going to rename this, and we're going to call this scanner face. Okay. So let's have a look at what we can do here. I want to let's get rid of that seam down the middle. So that's coming from the scale and the position of this guy. So if I just move him on the Y a little bit, about 0.5, that's going to get rid of that. Now I want to create a gradient shader, all right? And instead of linear, we're going to try and switch this to, I think, spherical. Let's just have a look at it. I'll pipe this in and just see what shows up for us. And let's go ahead and I'll create a new vector mapping node and just stick this up here, and I'll grab object, plug it into vector, vector into vector, and I'll keep that emission off to the side because I want to remember that value that I have set for that. And I'll just turn this back down to 1 so it's not blowing us away. And let's just play with the scale on this. Let's try maybe 8, 8, and 8. Let's just play around with the direction. Oh, there it is. All right, cool. Perfect. So now I should be able to scale this thing up. Excellent. All right, cool. So let's start with the iris. So that inter iris is what we want to do. This the center part. I'm going to bring this up, and I'm just going to try and get a shape that looks right to me in terms of size. So maybe 17. And this one, the scale on the X. Basically, think of this thing as a sphere in 3D space that we can't see, and it's intersecting. Wherever it intersects our object here is where we see it. So if I make this number bigger, it's like stretching it out more or less. It's kind of it's a little confusing, but if I make this 17, 17, 17, it's a perfect sphere, but it disappears because I believe it's too far back on the x-axis. So if we bring it forward on the x, so about negative 2.6 puts it right there in the middle. Cool. I mean, these numbers might be different for you too, depending on the size of your scanner bot and its position in the scene. So bear that in mind. That's something to think about. Let's go ahead and create a color ramp. And let's stick that right here, just after the gradient texture. And now we can use this to kind of firm up the edge. We could make it really, really strong or really dark. What we could do is even set this to constant. And now what we can do is we've got a lot more control over, we can have it like not have any fall off. So it's just a straight up hard edge thing, which I think is going to make more sense because we're doing this sort of digital face, if that makes sense. All right, now that we got this central eye iris set up, we need to create a system that allows us to make it get bigger and smaller. So we can adjust it with these values right here in our mapping node. Now we've got the scale here. So if I create a value node, just to give us a little bit of control, and I can just show you how it works. And then we need to go for a combine XYZ. You can drop that here and go, where is it? There it is. 1, 2, 3. And I just enter the number 17. And then we can pipe this vector into the scale. It's going to be exactly the same, but now I've got the control here where I can make it bigger and smaller. So we want to control this somehow, and I want to have it in a way that's really easy to get a hold of and kind of interact with when I'm animating. Because you remember, like back to, what was it, the second episode, we built the animation machine. We got to think about how do you make the experience fun. You know, you got to enjoy the process of animating. You got to enjoy the process of working with what you've made. So how can you make something that's, you know, fun to interact with and allows you to be really creative? So what we're going to do is we're going to create a separate little object that's going to be a controller for the eye of our scanner bot. So I'm going to hit Shift A. We're going to go empty and sphere. I'm going to scale it right down, grab it on the X, bring it right out here. And I'm going to label it. I'm going to call it iris control. And what we want to do is we want to take the Z value of this and use it to drive the size of this little eye. Okay, so when I have this guy at the 0 position, let's say, I want this iris to be basically this shape, the right size. So let's go right here and let's figure out let's figure out the bounds of this iris. How big do we want it to get? How small do we want it to get? So if I increase the number, you see it gets smaller. So the higher the number is, the smaller it gets. If we get to about 21.9, I think it disappears. Okay, so 21.9, that's going to be the ceiling on that end. And then let's go the other way. So you can see that when we get to a certain size, it starts to shrink back down. So we get to 15, I think it starts to shrink. Yeah. So 15 is going to be the max on the other end. Okay. Now the reason why it's shrinking, it has to do with the fact that we're scaling all three of these together. And what we need to do is we need to create something that's going to be a value that's driven by the position of this guy. And then we need to translate that Z position into these numbers. Okay. So we know what the high and the low range needs to be. We know it needs to be 15 and it needs to be 21.9 on the other end. So we can use a map range node. All right, so this is a very cool node. It can be really hard to wrap your head around, but it's really powerful and really useful. So it's worth trying to wrap your head around it because you can get a lot of mileage out of this thing. So we come over to the iris control. What we want to do is we want to be accessing the Z position. All right, so right now it's right on its 0. Okay, when we're at 0, we need to think about, okay, which end do we want to be at with this thing? I think maybe what we'll do is at 0, we'll have the eye be fully sort of gone, like the iris as small as possible. 21.9 is the smallest we ever want our iris to go. So when this thing's at 0, we want this to be at 21.9. So when the minimum is at 0, our minimum here is going to be 21.9. Now, when this thing goes up to, what was it, up here, so 0.09. So when it's at 0.09, what do we want this to be? Well, we want this to be fully dilated, so fully open. So 15 was the number we decided on for that. So we can just put to max at 15. And now what it's going to do is it's going to translate the position, the Z position of iris control is going to translate into these numbers. So 0 and 0.09 are going to translate to 21.9 to 15. So hope that makes sense. I tried to explain it slowly, but all right. So how do we make that work? We need to access the Z position of iris control. Now, the way to do that is going to be, or first we'll create a value node that can drive it. So let's create a new value node. And this value node is going to access the Z position of iris control. So we're going to right click on this and we're going to say add driver. We'll get this little pop-up window. We can get rid of the expression. Actually, before we get rid of the expression, I'll explain it. So what we're going to do is right here, this is where we can access the value. And we're going to put it into a variable that we can name anything right here. Right now it's named var for variable, it's just shorthand. And then this is the expression. It's just a sort of a default expression that Blender puts on things. And it's basically saying, take this value, assign it to this variable, and then take this variable and add 0.05 to it, or 0.5 to it. And whatever the result of that is what, the number for this is going to be. So we don't want that. Let's go to edit driver. And we want to select iris controls. So got 2 iris controls. That's the one I want, the lowercase one. Sorry, I was experimenting earlier. So by the way, it always disappears. It's really annoying. So you'll always be right clicking on it and going back to edit driver to get it to work. All right, so we want to grab the Z location specifically, okay? So you can see now the value here is 0.09, and that's the Z position of our iris control. That's correct. But we don't want to be adding anything to it. We actually just want that number. Now you could change this to anything. You could say X, and then we want to change this to X as well. That's going to work. So it's basically just saying this is the name of the variable that's assigning this value, and then you could do stuff to it. But we don't want to do anything to it. We just want the value straight up. So that's how we do that. So now you can see this is 0.09. If I take iris control and grab it down to some random point like here, 0.043, come over here, you can see it's 0.04. It's rounding it up a little bit, but there's the value. So now what we can do is we can take this and we can plug it into here, okay? Now it's going to be translating the Z position of iris control, and it's going to be turning it into a variation of these 2 numbers as the high and low bound. So now it's basically doing the work for us that this value node was doing manually. So we can take each of these and pop them in just like that. Now you can see if we grab iris control, we're changing the size of the iris. Very cool. Took a while, but that's how we do it. All right, let's keep going. Next thing we want to do is we want to change what else do we want to change? We want to have an outer iris for this thing. So like an outer circle. So we can do a very similar setup for that. Let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit. I'll get rid of that value node and I'll just move this stuff around a little bit. All right, now we might want to label this so that it's clear for us. So I can take this, actually we can just hit Shift A and we can go Layout Frame. And we can grab a frame node here and just drag it out, and then we can Shift select these guys, drop them in. And then we can rename this frame here. We could call it under label, let's call it the iris control. Now, next thing we want to do is we want to have a bit of a ring going. So let's create another large circle. So I'm going to create a new mapping node, a new gradient, a new color ramp, and we'll keep the emission. And we'll plug all these guys up. So we'll take object, plug it up to here. Sorry, I'll zoom in a bit so you can actually see. And we'll take the vector, pipe it into there, the color, pipe it into there, and the color, and pipe it into there. Okay, now it's pretty much the same now, except it's not being driven by the position of iris control. And for this one, let's make it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to find the right value for that. So I'll come down. All right, so I like that. We'll go with 6. I'll keep this one at 17 because, of course, if you remember, this scale is actually affecting the overall size. Wait, there we go. That's kind of cool. Anyways, we're going to create that in a different way because I want a bit more control. So I'll keep this at 17 for now because it's working. All right, so 6 is going to be kind of our base value for this. And then I'm going to have another one. So I'll just Shift select all this, hit Shift D, drag this up, connect object to the vector. And I want to subtract it. So what we can do is we can come here to mix RGB right here. And we're going to switch this to multiply. Swap those around. Turn my factor all the way up to 1. And now what I can do, there we go, is I can swap these like this. And just drag this one out a little bit. And you can see it's going to create this little iris for us. And then what we can do is we can now affect the size of this like this. Okay. So I'll set this one to maybe 7 for now. And I'm going to go ahead and grab a combine. X, Y, Z, and a value node. Plug the vector in. Actually, before I do that, I'll just double check my numbers. So 17, and these guys are going to be 7. That's right. So I'll make this 7. I'll plug this into both. So now I can just control it with one number. And then what we can do is we can combine all of this up with this one down here. So grab these out, and let's take this, and we'll Shift-D to duplicate that. And what do I want to do? I just want to add these together. So I'll take the color of this one, the color of this one. And adding is, just like it sounds like, it's just the method of adding two numbers together. So it's going to give us that result, because remember, black is 0 and this white is 1. So you add 0 and 1, you're going to get 1. And there you go. So now these are two separate systems that we can control. And let's set up the same thing for this. So grab that, grab that. So we'll keep that at 17. This one's going to be 6. So I'll plug 6 into both of those, and then this one into here. And now we've got this control for the outer part of the ring. And this will just give us a little bit more expression control for these guys. Great. All right. Now, what we want to do is drive them with another system. So we've got our main iris control. We can move around with this. I want to have one that affects both of these guys together, and then one that allows this center one to go up and down. So let's go ahead and do the one that controls both of them together first. So let's think about that. We're going to create another sort of iris control. I'm going to hit Shift-D, and we'll call this one, I'll call it outer iris. I know technically that's not anatomically correct, but control, outer iris control makes a bit of sense. I'll grab it up on the Z a little bit, and I'll actually scale this one up so it's a little bit bigger. All right, so we'll start with this. So what is this? 8.5 and 8.9. Okay, I might simplify it. Just make that 9, make that 8. Feels good. Okay, so 8 and 9. These two values, we want to basically keep them the same distance apart, which is conveniently a distance of 1, which is nice. And that's going to make this pretty easy. All right, so let's go ahead and create a new value node. And this is going to be the one that drives both of them together. We're going to basically add this number to these guys. So let's create a math node, and we'll pipe that into there. We'll take this value, pipe it into there, and then this value, and send it into there. And then this one right here, we'll do the same thing. So I'll Shift-D, bring that up, actually pipe those in, and pipe this one into there. And then just so it's a little clearer, I could just flip these around so that those lines aren't intersecting. Because you can see this kind of thing can get really confusing pretty quick. All right. Now let's, well, this is the one we're going to create a driver for. So right now, that's cool. I need to pipe that. That's missing. There we go. So you can see with this value, as it gets bigger and smaller, these guys are going to basically stay the same distance apart. And it's just going to change the size of them. So we can have some expression here. It's going to get freaked out. So let's find a base position. Where do we want this thing to start from? Probably 0 is fine. I'll do what they did before. We'll find the upper and lower bounds. So I think the widest I want it to go is like all the way out like this. So -8, we'll say. So that'll be the upper end. So I'll go ahead and create a mapping node, map range node, I mean. When this guy is up here, let's say, put him right up here maybe. So 0.15. Yeah, it looks pretty lined up. I'm kind of like eyeing it and lining it up with the top so that it just makes sense logically to me. So, okay, so 0.15 is going to be our top range for that guy. And this is the bit that's coming into our value. So our max is going to be 0.15. Our minimum is going to be 0. We want to be at -8. So our 2 max is going to be -8. And then the minimum is going to be what? We want to come right down, maybe to here. Yeah, we'll do that. So -28 is going to be the minimum. All right, cool. So now what we can do is we can pipe this in where this was being piped in. Just make a little bit more room. Now I can plug this into the value. Right click on this, and we're going to add a driver. We're going to select outer iris control. We're going to grab the Z location. We want to switch this to local space. That's important. We didn't do that last time with the other one, so let's make sure we do that. Also want to get rid of that little bit there. So let's grab outer iris control. And so yeah, now you can see we're getting what we wanted. All right, let's fix up the inner one as well. I need to make sure that driver is correct. So let's edit this driver. And yeah, world space, we need to switch that to local space. That's good. Now let's go ahead and get sort of the digital readout thing set up for this. Now, as I was saying before, we can use the system that we already had down here. But let's go ahead and label things as well, because this is already a horrible, horrific mess. And we don't want to confuse ourselves later on down the track. Okay, so now what we can do is we can go ahead and turn on the digital look to this thing. So we could combine up, we could use a similar thing to what we're using on the outside here. I think that was kind of working well. So, because I like how it sort of matches the look of our jets. It kind of doesn't make sense logically, but I don't really mind. I think it's just kind of cool. So let's come back up here. We're going to take this system. I'm just going to duplicate my texture coordinate. Sorry, I'm so zoomed out, you probably can't see anything. Just grab my texture coordinate node, bring it right over here. And I'm going to plug the object into the vector. And you remember with this one, it's set to texture, not point. Point's the default. This one's set to texture, and this is how we got that working well last time to get that look. So if I was to plug this back into the color, you can see that's what we're getting here. Except, of course, that emission is much too dim. So we'll bring this one back up. This was the old one we were using. So if I bring that into the color, I can then do that. And now we're going to have, it's going to look a lot better. All right. So first thing, let's see. I need to get this set up right. So I'm pretty sure that, yeah, that little edge there, we don't need. We can just get rid of that by scaling it up on the X. Now, what we could do is we could bring the Y right down, and we could actually have a bit of a grid pattern like this, like it's sort of a pixel display. And that might be cool. Let's start with that. And we'll see what we think of it. Okay, so we've got our grid texture. We basically want to get rid of all of the grid wherever we have black, right? For this. So wherever it's black, we don't want to have any grid texture. Wherever it's white, we do. Or even actually, maybe we do want it. We could use it maybe for the bump. That could be cool, because then there's like this sort of pixel density that's already there, and it's just some are lit up and some aren't. That's nice. We could probably use it somehow. So, and I'm going to create a principled BSDF shader. Drop that here. Grab this down. And let's go ahead and get the emission working correctly. So I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to Shift D, and we're going to, actually, I'll just create a new one so we don't have all those values. So this is going to be a mix RGB, and we're going to set it to multiply. We'll take our iris shapes, and we're going to multiply them with our grid. Turn the factor all the way up so it's fully multiplying them both using all the information we've got. And now we can pipe this into the emission, and then pipe this into the surface. And you can see now we've got grid here and no grid there. So that's what we wanted. Now let's take this emission. We're going to have to, so we had our strength set to like 16.9. I'll go ahead and delete that. And I will move these as well to give us a little more room. What I could do is turn the value up, and let's go ahead and turn our background back down to black. And base color, set this to black as well. And I'll create a color ramp, and I'll take the factor and pipe it into it. Just to show you what that looks like, I'll just bring this and pipe it into the emission so you can see it. So that's what this has in it. And I'm going to use this just to affect possibly the roughness, or maybe even, let's try the bump. So let's grab a normal node, normal map. Sorry, not normal map, just straight up normal. No, not normal, bump. Jeez, where's my brain today? Let's grab a bump node. There it is. Grab that. Let's stick the color into the height, and then the normal into the normal. And now so that we can see it, you can kind of see up here like where it's shiny. So if I turn down my roughness, it's going to get even more visible. So now it's like we got this pixel grid. That's kind of cool. I like that. That's really nice. Yeah, and that's going to shine and stuff and reflect, and it's going to look really good. Okay, so now you can see when we grab this and move it around, we can affect our pixel grid with these expressions. This one can get smaller. Looks really nice. All right, this looks really awesome. All right, the last thing, I want to go ahead and rig this thing up so that it's all set up so we can animate it easily. And also want to make sure everything's parented correctly. So iris control and outer iris control, they need to be parented to ScannerBot because they need to move with the ScannerBot, okay? So let's go ahead and we'll grab both of those guys and we'll control click the ScannerBot and hit Control P with your mouse point over the viewport. And we click on object, that's going to parent them inside. So now when this guy moves around, it's not going to affect the irises. And then I want to do is I want to take the jets. One thing that is annoying is the fact that we can see these things intersecting. So actually, in that case, I think it would be easier than if we used a controller. So let's do that. Let's just go here. We'll click circle, and I'll rotate on the X 90. Let's scale it right down. And this will just be the controller for these guys. Actually, we could probably, let's rotate on the Y90. That makes more sense because we can grab it and rotate it around however we want it. All right. Cool. So let's just take this. Actually, we'll take the empty here. We'll call this the scanner jet control. And then we'll just take this and we will control click the scanner jet control, hit Control P to parent object, and then we'll just take the scanner jet control click ScannerBot, Control P to parent. So now it's just all parented up. So now it's just a bit easier. We can grab this thing, and now what we can do is we can lock the location, the X, Z, and the scale. So now we just hit R and drag it, it'll rotate, and we're not going to see this. It's not going to like intersect the face, and that just makes it easier for us to just to play with. So just a few last things I want to do just to kind of finish this off. I want to have one more little circular cutout right in the middle for like the central iris. I think that would be really nice for helping to really sell personality. So let's just add that in real quick. All we're going to need to do is take our iris control system and the mapping node that we're using, as well as the gradient texture and the color ramp. And we're just going to Shift D all of those and drag them down. Also, I'm going to make just a little bit more room and select all these guys and drag them down. What we're going to do is just add in one more multiply here, and we're just going to use this to multiply out the center bit. So we just want to reverse these so that instead of a bright white eye, it's a black circle, and everything else is white. And that way we can multiply it out, and it'll get rid of wherever this circle is. So I'm just going to hit Shift D to duplicate, connect that in there, connect that to here. Oh. Okay, so once we got the multiply hooked in, there's one last step we need to do, and that is we need to come over here and we need to grab the object texture coordinate and drop that right there into the vector. And that's going to tell it where to position. So now you can see, now we're getting this. All right, so now let's set up the driver. So we're just going to go into ScannerBot. And we're just going to come here to select our iris control. We're going to create a second one that we can use to create this inner iris. So we'll Shift D to duplicate it and change the name to inner iris control. There we go. Back over to the shader. Now we can just right click on this, add driver. And then we want to go to the object inner iris control. And we want to use the Z location in local space. And let's get rid of that expression and just use the variable itself. Now we can use the inner iris control to change the size of that. And then this one changes the size of that. So now we got a little more personality for our for our little guy. One last thing I want to do is I want to be able to have this thing look in a certain direction. So it'd be great to be able to move this eye around. Now to do that, what I actually want to do is we're going to separate this screen section out as a different object. So we're just going to go into edit mode. I'm going to hit C to do brush select, and I'm just going to select like that. And then I'm going to hit Control plus, looks like 2 times to select that. Now it's also going to select some at the back because we're connected. I actually don't know why it did that, but that's all right. We could use this. I actually do want to use some of these back ones. So if yours doesn't select like that, go ahead and select these guys as well. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to hit Shift D to duplicate. All right. And that's going to duplicate those faces. They're not connected to anything now. And then we're going to hit, actually, I can just show you that. We hit G to grab. You can see I can now grab these guys, but we still have them there on the base geometry. So we just have more faces. And then what we're going to do is separate these guys out. So we're going to hit P just in that main editor window, and we're going to separate by selection. Okay. So now this is actually a separate object. Now what we want to do is scale it up. So let's select that, and we will get out of edit mode. There we go. And we're just going to scale up. And the reason why we're scaling is because if I rotate on the Y and stuff at the scale that we're going to intersect the geometry. You can see just like that. So if I scale that up, it's going to work a bit better. And now let me rotate on the Y back. I'll rotate on Z just to see if we're intersecting. Yeah, we are just a little bit. So I'll scale up just a touch more. Make sure that your origin for this guy is right at the center of the world too, just so if you rotate it, you can scale it and it'll be proportional. All right, that's pretty good. That's what we want. All right, so let's zero out his rotation now. And then we're also going to add a thicken modifier because it's just like this thin face, you can see. So I turn off that, hide our controls. You can see it's just like a single polygon thickness. So we want to just go here to the modifiers, and we're going to add in a solidify. Add a solidify modifier. And I'm just going to drag my thickness up. Oops, added it to the wrong object. We want it on the eye here. So I'll just actually rename this scanner eye, and I will add in a solidify modifier, and I'm going to change the thickness just so it intersects the geometry. There we go. And we could also add in a bevel, I think probably work pretty well. So let's add in a bevel modifier. And then what we can do is change the limit method to angle, and that's going to only put a bevel when the angle is greater than 30 degrees. All right, now next thing I want to do is I want to create a little gap, like there's a slot for this thing here. So I'll select the scanner eye, go into edit mode, and I just want to select these faces just like this. I might come all the way in to here, and I'll do the same on this side. Just like that. And I'll hit X to delete those faces. And now we've got like these gaps so that when this thing rotates, you know, like on the Z, you can see it's going to kind of rotate and slot in with this thing. Now, I think we have a little bit of intersection, yeah, here with this. So we need to scan this guy, to scale that guy up. So let's go ahead and let's grab the, where is it? Here we go, the scanner bot jets, and I'm just going to scale him up just till he's not, you know, intersecting this new bit of geometry that we've added. All right, cool. Now what we want to do is I'll go ahead and zero out the rotation again. Let's create one more empty. Plane axis empty, grab it on the X, drag it right out, scale it down, and this is going to be our look control. So scanner bot look control. And let's go ahead and control click scanner bot, control P to parent, stick that in there. And then we want to add a constraint to the eye. So let's click on the eye here. We're just going to go down to the constraints tab, which is this one here. And we're going to add a damped track constraint. And we just need to select the scanner bot look control. And also need to switch to, I think, X. Yeah, just experiment with this. You just click all the different ones to kind of see which one's going to give you the right option. So now if I click on the look control, where is it? Outer iris, scanner bot look control. This guy is going to follow wherever this is. All right. It's looking good. All right. Now, the last thing we need to do, of course, is to fix up the material here so we don't have an eye within the eye. So let's just select the main body. Let's just click here to the duplicate the material, and we'll call this scanner face base. And if we go over to that material here, what we could do is we could just use the bump for it. I think that would look pretty good. So what we can do is just unplug the emission, and that means now it's just going to be like that screen bump material. And just so we're not processing all this stuff twice, we can just box select all of these things, hit X to delete, grab this up. So this is the only bit. It's important not to have unused nodes because they will slow down your system and your render. So, all right. So that's all we've got time for today. Hope that was really exciting and interesting for you, that you learned a lot about how you can create really cool facial rigs for things using just materials and a couple of empties, how you can link things together. I know it got a bit kind of confusing and noodly as we got into all the math stuff. So just kind of repeat the tutorial, try it a couple of times yourself, experiment with what I'm doing, and hopefully that'll really help it click for you. And you can see exactly what's happening behind the scenes. Again, if you want to get these project files, download this guy. You can access them on the Patreon. If you become a patron, everyone at the $9.99 tier and up, that's $9.99, not $100 or $1,000. Anyways, anyone at that tier gets all the project files for this as they release. I've been pushing those out. We also have more tutorials over on Patreon. We've got the entire modeling series for the hero spaceship and the bad guy spider bot, which we're going to be bringing in soon. If you want to learn how to make those or download those project files as well, you can get them there. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell if you want to get notifications. I do spontaneous live recordings for these. So if you want to know when they're happening, ring the bell. You'll get a notification when I go live to start recording one, so you can catch a glimpse of what the next episode is going to look like early. That's a lot of fun, and we have a good time there in chat. So please check those out. All right. Well, thanks so much for watching. I will catch you in the next tutorial. See ya.